Hello everybody. So back to Angular 2, we've just finished working on modules and I hope that everybody got a good understanding on how that works. And if people are a little lost on how it works, please don't hesitate to message me or just send me something over YouTube. I'm happy to answer. So moving on from that though, we're going to now start looking at components. And what I thought I'd do in this first video was not spend too much time explaining what a component is and how to bind to it and things like that, but I wanted to actually style up this web page a little bit, and in doing so you'll learn where each component and page and styles go and that kind of stuff, right? So it'll give you a very quick understanding on how components are broken up and how they're built, without going into too much detail. Plus, I wanted to actually give a decent looking website, because at the moment this is very ugly. Like, if you look at it, you've got I am awesome, which makes no sense. You've got a teams table, it's very squashed together. You've got a link to see teams, but you're already on the teams page, and even if you go back to the root, you've got a link to see teams, right? So you should click here, and when you get here, you should be able to click to go back to see players, right? So just doing little things like that in this video, I thought would help us out into learning how app components are structured and just how all the HTML itself is structured. So let's get started. The first thing I noticed when I was writing this code is that we got this title up here, and at the moment it says basketball stats, but there's no space in between. Now, we obviously know this is inside the title element inside of a web page. So as expected, you just come into your source code, and on index.html you can see I've got right there no space, so just space that, and save, and very quickly this should now come back and you can see the space is now there. The second thing I want to cover is this main heading. So this is kind of like the site heading for this minor basketball stats application. So I'll really want to call this the same name as in the title. So where is that located? Well, it's not located, as you can see, inside of the index.html file. Like, you would think that it'd be just under the body tag. However, what you actually see in the body tag is this app-root element. Now, what is this app-root? Well, what it actually is it's an element that points to a particular component, right? So each component has a selector on it, and the selector is basically a particular element name, like this, right? So normally when you build a skeleton for an Angular 2 application, the default element will be called app-root, and the default place where it's located is in the app.component.ts file here. So if I click into here and I look up and I see inside of this app component decorator, underneath that there's this selector property, and you can see right there the selector is called app-root. So the selector of this component has to match this element here. If we have app-root here, whatever the contents of this component is will be replaced in this location, and that's how it works. So as we can see, we're expecting the header to be underneath the body tag, so it might be in this app-root, right? So we come in here and we see, what else do we see in this component? Well, we have this template URL, and what this template URL is it points to a HTML file that potentially contains some markup. So let's go have a look at that. So we go to app.component.html and we click on that, and what do we see? Well, we see a heading tag, and then we see this double parentheses with the word title inside of it, right? And so what does this mean? Well, what this is actually called in Angular 2 is interpolation, and this title property inside of this double parentheses here is actually located on the component class, the one that we just came from. So if we go back to app.component.ts, you'll see as part of the app component class we have a title property, right? And look what it's called. It says I am awesome, right? So what we really need to do is we need to replace this. So I'm going to call it a basketball ball stats, right? So if I now save this and I go back to the website, this will update to basketball stats, right? So that's good. That's what we want, right? Now, the other thing I want to mention too at this point, this component here has a HTML file, right? This HTML file, whoops, let me get the right HTML file here. This app.component.html file contains a heading with a little title, and it contains a Rada outlet, right? And underneath here, it has a Rada link. Now, we're going to remove this Rada link for now because we don't want it to be on every page. So we're going to remove that. Now, you can see right now, there's not a lot of markup here. There's not a lot of HTML inside this HTML file, right? So what you can do is if you feel like there's not going to ever be much in a component, rather than having a separate HTML file to store it, you can actually embed it straight into the app component itself. And to do that, instead of using template URL, you can just go template, like so, right? And instead of specifying a location here, you can put in your markup. Now, you can see right now, it broke. And you're probably going, oh God, you got to do that whole JavaScript where you put things on the end and you do the plus, and then you get to the new line, you put a quote, all that stuff that you do in JavaScript. Well, you don't actually need to do that here anymore, because in ECMAScript 6, which is also included as part of TypeScript, you can use this backtick. So this little backtick, which is next to the 1 key on your keyboard. So you've got the little tilde symbol, and then underneath that, you've got a little tick symbol. And this is the same for Windows. You've got the same backtick in the same location. So what that allows us to do now is it allows us to have what referred to as a string on separate lines. So if I now go and remove this quote and add the backtick here, we can see now it's all good again. It doesn't complain anymore. So now we can come in here, we can format this a little bit, we can put things on new lines, and just to see where it starts and ends. And then we've got a little markup inside of our template, right? So if we go and we refresh this, and we come back, you'll see that the app component still loads, right? You still got your heading, and you still got the router outlet, which contains the players component by default. So now we don't need to be concerned about that component HTML anymore. So we can in fact delete that. So let's do that. Let's actually delete this file. Whoops. Yeah. Delete. Move to trash. Because that for this particular application, now later on we may feel that we need to go back to our HTML file. If you need to do that, you just create one back and you put your markup back in there. Simple as that. I just wanted to quickly demonstrate that you don't always have to have a HTML file in order to have markup. Now, I would highly recommend you do. Like, I'm just showing this for an example. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't care. I just leave it as a separate HTML file, just because it's a better separation of concerns. As you can see here, we've now got markup in with code, and it's not always ideal because now you've got to find title in here, and it's just it's not great, So, but I just wanted to show that as an example. So I'm going to leave that for now. So we've now successfully updated the title in there. We've updated this here. Now what we want to do as well is we want to include the link on the players page and on the teams page to point to each other, right? So when we're on the teams page, I want a link that points back to the players, and when I go to the players one, I want a link that points to the teams, right? So let's do that. So for the team list component, which is where we'll start, we obviously have a team list.component.ts, and inside of here, we know we need to access the HTML. So we've got a template URL which points to team-list.component.html. It happens to be the same directory, so we come to team-list.component.html. And at the bottom of this file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a paragraph, and then we're going to add an anchor tag, and then we have this attribute called router link, right? So this is a attribute that's known by the router module, it can understand this particular attribute. And we're going to point that to, well, in this case, we're on the teams page. We're going to go /players. And then we just go click here for players. It's like any other HTML markup. Now, because the players one, the teams link will be similar, I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go up to the players area, into player lists, and inside of player lists, I'll click on player list component.html because I know that's part of this component here. Right, and I'll do the same thing, except I'll change this to teams, and I'll change this text to teams. All right, so let's save that. And we'll go back. And when this reloads, so we're on the main page, we're showing the player list. We have a hyperlink that goes click here for teams. We click on that. And now we're at the teams, right? And we've got the team information, but then we have this link to click back to players. So if I click here again, it will go to the players URL, which happens to be the same thing as going to the root URL. And you got the players information again, right? And that's pretty much it to link backwards and forwards there, right? So that's some of the markup that's covered. Now I want to actually add some styling to this, right? So I want to actually make the site look a little bit more presentable than it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Bootstrap to this site, and to do that, I'm just going to go to the Bootstrap site, which at the moment it's in alpha, but that's fine. I'm not trying to publish this or anything. So come down to the page, we've got this Bootstrap CDN section. I'm going to click on the copy link here and go back to my code, and I'm going to go to my index.html file, so my main file. And under this link here, where they've got the favor icon, and before the head, don't know why that head is not on a different line, but it wasn't. Right under there, we're going to paste. Now, it's also pasted the script file there, which is not what we want. So we cut the script file out, because scripts should always belong at the bottom of a body element, right? Which I've done there. I've pasted that in. So we've got the style sheet for Bootstrap, and we've got the script for Bootstrap. So I'm going to save that, and we should now start to get a little bit more styling. You know, at least the text will be a little bit different when it decides it wants to compile it. And there we go. So a little bit more styling. You know, things are a little bit more sans serif, so to speak. But everything looks very close together, and you can see everything's close to the edge here. So I'm going to try and provide a little bit of spacing at the top here, and a little bit of spacing to the left, and we might, you know, reduce the width of the overall content here, so we have a little bit of spacing on each side, and then eventually I'll style these tables, and then maybe the hyperlink, but potentially, but at least the tables. So first we'll address the body issue, so this spacing area. So to do that, well, you've got your main style sheet, which you'll go to in this circumstance. Come down here, I'm going to apply some styles for the body tag. So I'm going to go to body, I'm going to provide a padding on the body tag, and we're just going to put it 20 from the top and 20 from the bottom, and then nothing on left and right. And the reason for that is I'm about to apply a margin. So we're going to go margin of nothing top and bottom, and auto. Auto meaning if we're not taking the full width of the screen, we're going to divide the left and right evenly, so it gives you a centering feel. And because we want to reduce the width of the screen, we don't want it to go across the whole screen, I'm going to specify here a max width of 90%. And save. Alright, so now you should see things pushed over a little bit, and there you go, you got some spacing there, got some spacing at the top. The table still looks like crap, but that's okay, we'll get to that soon. And that's pretty much it for the main styling. Now let's address these tables now. So the first one I'm going to address is I'm going to address this players table. And before I can do that, I have to go and update the HTML for the table because it requires a T body and a T head inside of each of the tables. So we'll come up to player list component, and inside this table I'm going to add a T head here, and I'm going to end it after the first TR. That's to define the heading of the table, because usually you have the column headings as part of your T head. And then underneath here I'm going to put T body, and this will be the rest of the data that you normally have. In the circumstances of this table, we're using ng4 and we're passing in an array. I'm not going to specify at this stage how that works. If you look at the code that's been written so far, it's actually not too hard to understand. But I'll leave it for another time. So I've added the team head and the team body to this table. So what I need to do now is I need to style it, because if you look back here, nothing's changed. It looks exactly the same. So how do we style this? Do we go to the main site and style it? And then if we style it there, we're going to have to add IDs to these tables to make sure that one doesn't clash with the other, and so on and so forth. We can apply it to the styles.css file. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It just makes your style sheets a little bit more complex. However, Angular has been a little bit clever, and it's actually giving you the ability to load your own style sheet for your component. So if you look at the component, you have style URLs, and you got an array where you can specify a number of different style sheets that you can use for this component. Now, I've just got the one at the moment, and it's basically player-list.component.css, and this was generated when I generated the component. But you'll see at the moment there's nothing in there. So what I want to do is, before I come into this, I'm going to apply the Bootstrap classes for this table. And essentially all I need to do is come up to the main table element and go class equals table striped. And because we want some hovering, I'm going to put table hover. Right? And I'm going to save that. And I'll just quickly come to confirm that that's going to become a Bootstrap table. And you can see now it looks a lot nicer. It's gone the full width of the screen. You've got the indentation on both sides. It's a little squashed up against the heading here, but that's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about that at this stage. But you've got that nice hover effect. You've got the the alternate styling effect. You've got the header effects, but it doesn't really look like the Cleveland theme colors. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually style this table on its own for this component. So the styles I apply will only affect this component and nothing else. So I'm going to add another table under here that's not part of the players component, and it's not going to affect anything. In fact, I'm going to even show that after I've done this. So first, let's style this table. I'm going to start with the heading. I think, I'll start with the heading. We're going to make it a blackish color, maybe slightly dark gray with white text. So let's go about doing that first. So where do we put this information? Well, as I said, we put it inside of the player list.component CSS. So to do this, or to get what I want, I'm going to go table striped, and then I'm going to go T head TR. Now, I'm not going to explain too much what these styles do or these selectors do, but essentially it's just grabbing the header or the heading row from the player list table, and we're going to apply a background of #232, so a very darkish color, and then we're going to ensure that the color here, which is the color of the text, is white, which is FFF. And if I save that now and I go back over to my site, it should reload, and see now you've got that black with white color, and it looks quite nice at the moment, right? You got that nice darkened style, Now, I believe Bootstrap actually can do this by default, but I wanted to do it my way, just to prove, or just to show that you can actually style these yourself for the component. So the next thing I want to do is I want to give the orange or red look. I'm trying to work out. Probably I'll go with the red look here. If you don't include it, they're like an orange and red color. I might go with the red color here first. So for each odd, I'm going to make it red. For each even, I'm going to make it orange. And then we're going to have a slight hover color for when we hover over the row. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. So for the odd row, we're going to go table stripe, T body, because now we're addressing the things inside the T body. And then we go TR, and we're going to go nth of type. Right, so a number of type of those of type odd. So we're getting every odd row. Right. And we're gonna specify in this particular scenario, we're gonna specify what rules. Hang on, I'm just going back over my list of things here. We're gonna do a background of FF, so hash background of hash FF CAB5, like so. In fact, that's the orange. Is it the orange color? Sorry, I think that I've gone with the wrong color here. 94163F. 94163F. That's right. So that's the color I want. I want that red color. Alright, so I'm going to stick with that red color. I'm also going to set the color of the text when it's this to white. So FFF. So that's fine. And then I'm going to set, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a rule at the top here because it's always going to be white, I think, until I make it otherwise. So, whoops, I'm going to go dot table striped TR, so we're not going to worry about whether it's in the header or the body. And we're going to specify the color as white. Oops. I'll just type it. Color hash FFF. Right. And then the head we have that. And then for that, and then for the same row, but when it hovers, so I'm going to add a slash hover at the end. We're going to use AF 163F. So a slight increase of red, essentially. And that'll be the first odd rows. And then for the even rows, we're going to do something very similar, except that we're going to make we'll make this even, and we'll make this even, and we're going to make the color black. So, or we'll go with that. Was it 232 color, just to give it a little bit more grayish. And the background color for even rows will be FFCA5B, and when it hovers, we're going to make it FFDC5B. So, not DB, DC. So CA essentially has become DC in this case, a slight increase in green. And we'll see how that looks. We'll go back, we'll take a look. And this is what we've got. So we've got ourselves a header. It's black. We've got the first row. It's like a tingy color. If I hover over it, we get a slight increase in red. And then underneath it, we've got an orange color with black text. If I hover over that, we get a slight more yellowish, or I'd say yellow, even though it's only an increased green color. And it's the same for all of them. Now, just to prove that this isn't affecting anything else, any other table that we create. If I go back to the app component, which is the thing that's embedding the playlist component, so if I go under app component into the markup, where is it? Oh, that's right. I removed it, didn't I? I put it into here. If I quickly just come in here, I'll take this out. Table class equals table striped, and we'll just do that for the moment. Oh no, we'll put in the lot. Table hover. Right. We go slash table. If I put in TR, and I'll just put TD first row, and then we'll do the same for the second row. So again, this is why you don't use inline. For when you want to demonstrate things, it's not always easy. Alright, so second row, save that. So now we should have a table underneath it that shouldn't be unaffected by the styles. And as you can see, we do. We have a table, and it's just one row, but you can see it's using the information or the general styles of Bootstrap. So it's not actually taking into consideration the changes we've made for this component. And if we click on Teams, you'll also see that, well, we haven't even applied the table classes yet, but you'll also see that nothing's changed here. So now I'm going to take this out and put this back, like so, and save that. Now we'll go into Teams, and Team List Component, HTML. We're going to apply the class of table striped, and table hover, like before. Oops. And we're going to add the T head. And T body. I know this is a very long video, but it's giving us an opportunity to understand where things go in our code. So now this should be looking like a Bootstrap table. And finally, to apply the styles, well, where do we do that? Yep, you guessed it, teamlist.component.css. So we come in here, we apply our styles, and the styles are going to be very, very similar to the playlist one, except there won't be as many. So we're going to come down, playlist components, team list, there it is. Now we don't need the last two, I can tell you that for a fact, because we're going to leave it white, or whatever the default is. We don't necessarily need this first line, because we are going to explicitly and then we're going to set, whenever it's blue, the color will also be white, and we want to use a bluish color for this. So I'm going to go with, what color I'm going to use? Let me think. Where have I got it listed? Where is it? Sorry guys, one moment. I did have it in front of me, and now I don't seem to know where I put it. Ah, here we go. So I'm going to go with, so first, yeah, it's a bit odd. We're going to go 006 BB6. So that's the blue for non-highlight. And then for highlight, we're going to go with 006 9EE. Like so, so slightly more blue. Now if I save that and I go back to the team list here, it should update. And you can see it looks pretty nice. We can hover over and we get the default Bootstrap hover here. It goes from a little bit light grey to darker grey, whereas with mine it goes from a lovely blue to, well, it's kind of a bit too, what's the word? Saturated. It's too saturated, the colour, but never mind. It is for a hover, so it doesn't look so bad when it's for a hover. But you can see that that's how you kind of build out styles for your components. And again, they don't affect each other. You know, you can jump backwards and forwards. But in the next video, I'm going to cover more about what components can do. At this stage, all we did was look at where do we put markup and where do we put CSS. You know, which is handy to know straight off the bat, and even to know where to put global rules for CSS and certain markups, and the fact that we can have components inside of other components and things like that. But I'm going to address this more in the next video, which will talk about, you know, how to basically build a component. We'll probably build another player component or a player profile component. So when you click on this, it'll load a player profile component down here, and we'll talk about how we can bind the things, whether it be dual binding or attribute binding or event handling, all that kind of stuff. Interpolation, which we've already seen. Yeah, so we're going to go through all that, and that's it. So I know it wasn't much in this video in terms of learning material, but I just wanted to get this looking a little bit better. And so thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.